Hello, I'm Eric Sorensen, and this is the West Block, Politics, Perspectives, and Players. As families search for answers to what happened to Flight 752 over the skies of Iran, some suggest it is the unintended consequence of the hostilities between the U.S. and Iran, and that both sides bear responsibility.
It was flying in a pretty rough neighborhood.
David Frum is a staff writer at The Atlantic and a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush and the author of Trumpocracy, The Corruption of the American Republic. We spoke with David Friday about the blameworthiness of both the Americans and the Iranians.
The Iranians have just bulldozed the crash site, removing all evidence. They are holding back the black box, which they claim they have found. There are questions about whether or not they will have tampered with it.
And Iran, can it just continue to be opaque in this matter?
Well, Iran is going to have an internal political problem. This is not like Russia striking a plane full of people from other countries. This is a case where Iran struck a plane with many people who have family in Iran. So as heartrending as this catastrophe has been inside Canada, many of the people, of course, were Canadian citizens or Canadian residents. They all have relatives back in Iran. And although Iran is a repressive society, it's not a completely closed society. And the grief that Canadians feel is going to be amplified inside the land where so many relatives of the victims lived.
Now, there's consensus pretty widely that Iran is blameworthy in this, but after the reports of the missile strike and the U.S. president said, well, there's been a mistake on their side, you produced an article in The Atlantic almost instantly that said the U.S. cannot shove all of the blame on Iran. Why?
Yes. There has been a chain of escalation of violence between the United States and Iran beginning about the 27th of December. There are strikes and counterstrikes. In this case, the United States, the second and third last rounds of the cycle of retaliation, the United States carried out an assassination of Qasem Soleimani, an Iranian terrorist general who has much blood on his hands and, of course, is a person deserving of a violent death. But the United States gave an explanation, or the Trump administration gave an explanation of its actions that's obviously not true. They said that he was killed in order to avert an imminent attack. That story is already disintegrating, and indeed it doesn't make logical sense. Qasem Soleimani was the man at the top of the chain of command. If you can stop an attack by killing the top guy, then the attack is not imminent. If the attack is imminent, killing the top guy won't make a difference. It wouldn't have stopped 9/11 had the United States killed Osama bin Laden 48 hours before. The plan was already underway. That's what it means to be imminent. So the United States escalated dramatically by killing Soleimani. The Iranians then counter-escalated by firing at the United States from inside Iran, something they had not done before. 2 hours after the Iranians unleash their barrage of missiles, they see a blip on their radar. It's the civilian airliner. But Iran is not a first world country. It doesn't have sophisticated technology. What it looks like happened was the Iranians saw this blip and thought that's the incoming American retaliation for the thing we just did, to punish them for the thing they just did. So it's Iran's crime. The Iranians acted and the Iranians killed. But this crime occurred in the context of an escalation that the United States also contributed to, and contributed to under false pretenses. American politics now is like geology. That there are 55% of the country is very strongly opposed to the president, and about 45% of the country, a little less, is strongly supportive of the president. And really, whatever the question is, those are the numbers. What Americans are clear about is that they do not want to get involved in a war in Iran. 3/4 of Americans oppose any kind of confrontation with Iran. The Trump administration has been stumbling toward exactly that kind of confrontation, partly by accident, partly because of the president's bad political calculation that escalating in Iran will help him with impeachment. But the confrontation keeps getting more violent. And President Trump is deluding himself if he thinks he's going to find any political relief from using violence against Iran.
Canadians are asking the questions you're asking, but do you have the sense then that Americans are asking it? Like, I'm trying to get a sense whether you think that Donald Trump's image is going to be burnished by this, or if he'll pay a political price.
We have I think we know the answer to that. The USA Today and Ipsos did a poll that they conducted over Tuesday and Wednesday of the week just preceding, where they asked Americans a series of questions. They showed by large majorities that Americans did not agree that killing Soleimani had made the United States more safe. And a majority, 55%, the familiar 55%, thought it was now more likely that Iran would develop a nuclear weapon. And we know that we can surmise, we don't know, we can surmise that the White House internal polling showed them the same thing. Because what was the first sentence out of the president's mouth at his press availability after the shootdown? He said, "I guarantee that Iran will not acquire a nuclear weapon." He was responding to polls that showed that 55% of Americans now think it's more likely that Iran will get a nuclear weapon because of what just happened.
Yeah, you're aware of and you've mentioned it, the toll on Canadians in that flight. Prime Minister Trudeau said it's too early to assign blame, as he put it, in whatever proportion, which suggests there is some blame to assign in more than one direction. How do you see, I guess, the effect of all of this on the Canada-U.S. relationship and the Trudeau-Trump relationship?
It's obviously going to be a strain. So to have 30 people meet a violent death in a town the size of Edmonton, I mean, that is a real dagger blow at a community. So I think Canadians are going to be grieving. I myself, just in casual conversation on the phone on other lines of business, have in the past few days talked to 2 people who knew someone who was on that flight. So the grief is going to be very widely shared in Canada. And I think Canadians are just going to be, I don't think it's going to be a big impact because, what can be done? But President Trump's lack of human feeling about it, I mean, it's not going to change anybody's mind. You knew he lacked human feeling, but it's just every time you confront his lack of human feeling, it's a shock.
David, we're out of time. We could talk to you all day, but thanks very much for talking to us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.